Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to speak here today. I was asked to share some view, as was pointed out, to what extent the UK market is attractive for a gas producer or a gas supplier. And the short answer is yes, but as always there are some caveats to that answer. Because on the one hand, it is clear that gas is set to play a very important and significant role in the future energy mix. It has all the characteristics that has been mentioned here earlier. It's affordable, it serves security of supply, and it has a very, relatively speaking, low carbon footprint. And to that end, we very much welcome the UK government's assurance that natural gas will continue to play a significant role in the UK energy mix well into and beyond 2030. And we are also very pleased, I must say, to read the Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, Ed Davies' remarks in The Guardian on Friday, where he remarks that the government is planning 20 gigawatts of gas-fired capacity by 2030. We also look forward to, and it's fair to say have high expectation to, the gas generating strategy that is to be published later this autumn. But on the other hand, the UK energy policy is currently undergoing considerable change. This, of course, includes the introduction of the electricity market reform, or the EMR, which is, I think it's fair to say, a very complex piece of legislation. So much so that in my mind, it does create some regulatory uncertainty, which is a key concern to us in the energy or oil and gas industry, simply because we are, by nature, a very long-term type of industry. We have to take a long-term view on what the shape of the UK energy market is going to be. I will try to elaborate more on the importance of exactly that point, because it is important to have a predictable future, to foster investment in natural gas, whether that be for power generation, transportation, storage, or production for that matter. But before doing so, let me say a few words on how we are positioned in the UK, both as Statoil and Norway, historically, and what we can do going forward. We have, if I can find the next view, no? I don't know where my presentation is now, to be honest. It's certainly not this one. Maybe somebody can help
I'm looking
us.
for James to help from the IT back room. So we're looking for the Statoil presentation.
Don't think you want to hear my comments on those view graphs, I'm sure.
Just hang on a second. I think we can sort it out.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide.
Yeah. There we are. Okay. I think for a start, we have a very solid and competitive position in the European energy market that liberalizes, it's fair to say, at different speeds, pursues national as well as European solution to a common goal to transform the energy system. Looking to the future, the Norwegian continental shelf constitutes a very solid backbone for business, with around 2 trillion cubic meters of reserves, plus I would say a promising base of contingent and yet to be discovered reserves. The recent high-impact discoveries, like Johan Sverdrup in the North Sea, Skrugard and Havers in the Barents Sea, and most recently King Lear. King Lear lends itself to go to the UK just by the name of it, although this guy descended to some madness in Shakespeare's play. show us that we have had a success over the past 40 years of oil and gas production offshore, and this is nowhere soon to approach an end. And I think that is a very important part that you have to have in mind when looking at this supply into the UK. Over the years, we have, as a company, invested billions in an extensive infrastructure from the Norwegian continental shelf to Europe, and not at least to the UK. This includes, of course, the 1,200 kilometer long Langeled pipeline, which is the world's longest offshore pipeline, or subsea pipeline. Now, today we have a total of 3 pipelines going into the UK. These pipelines have capacity far beyond what we deliver today. Today we deliver approximately 25% of the UK market. As Norway, Statoil is the lion's share of that supply. We can, just by the existing capacity, increase that to approximately 50% of the UK market. Provided, of course, that the right policy framework are put in place, few other countries in Europe could stand to benefit as much as the UK on its proximity to the Norwegian reserve base. It's literally in your backyard. The UK has therefore access to Europe's largest mature gas reserve base with a significant flexible pipeline system. This caters for major and secure supplies for decades to come, should you wish to do so. We currently supply the UK through a mix of long-term supply contracts, direct sales to large industrial customers, and very active in the short-term sales and trading part. We have been a large player in the UK for 3 decades now, greatly appreciating the liberalization in the market that took place in the early 90s, introducing a liquid and transparent market. Currently, we do have new volumes for sale, and we can commit long term. We did that with Centrica earlier this year, where we entered a 10-year agreement covering a volume representing approximately 5% of the UK market. We are prepared to do it again, and we are currently in discussions with several potential buyers in the UK. And yesterday, we started our deliveries to SSE's Peterhead's power plant in Scotland. The strong partnership that has emerged over time is one that Statoil is determined to continue to commit to. However, I would say, despite the important signals that the UK government has expressed in support for gas going forward, even so, let me turn to some of the challenges we see for the UK gas market. The first I would like to dwell on is the increasing consumption of coal. Despite, I think, the most progressive anti-carbon regulation in the world, Europe and the UK are living a paradox. Most likely in the short term, I think, as the world enters what the IEA at least has coined the golden age of gas. Because what we see is that the low price and of CO2 and the continued subsidies for renewable have to a great extent pushed out gas. In the UK, coal-fired power generation has soared by more than 1/3 the first half of 2012 compared to the first half of 2011. This is an increase that most or is likely to have raised the CO2 emissions from the power sector, as coal-fired power plants emit up to 2/3 more CO2 than the existing portfolio of coal-fired plants. And while across Europe billions are spent on supporting renewables, the increase in coal generation has led to CO2 emission hardly being reduced at all. So therefore, in terms of emission at least, current policies have unfortunately provided little effect for the effort spent. Let me just, as an example, have a look at Germany, which is even more interesting in this respect. They have achieved an enormous expansion of renewable energy in their gross electricity production, now standing at as much as 26% for the first half of 2012. However, there has simultaneously been an increasing use of coal in the generation of power, and in August, Germany's environmental minister even opened a new coal-fired power station, marking it as a contribution to the German climate targets. I don't know how you can make that equation or make sense out of that, but that's at least what they did. And if you look at Germany, last year they spent, I think, 13 billion euros in direct subsidies. That does not include all the indirect subsidies, backup capacity, additional investment in grid structure to get the north-south issues sorted out. And there was no improvement in emissions. Temperature corrected, there was even an increase. So it seems, when we speak to German government, to German politicians, to German regulators, and to German everybody basically, it seems that there is a mix-up now between the means and the ends. They are very conscious when it comes to, and they know all the numbers about the share of renewables, but they don't know much about emissions of CO2, I'm afraid. So, again, a very high price tag for very poor results. In the UK, however, I think this will be a very temporary issue. This is because, firstly, carbon prices are gradually going to be limited downwards by the carbon price floor mechanism to be introduced next year. And secondly, I think the emission performance standard will put significantly constraints on coal-fired power plants. Nevertheless, today the rise of coal burn does contribute to some extent, I would say, to and impede swift investments in CCGTs, and it bars in many ways this country's unique opportunity to draw on experience gained from the early or first dash for gas in the 90s and significantly reduce the UK CO2 emission a second time around in a very cost efficient manner. If the UK is to achieve 20 gigawatt of new gas-fired power stations by 2030, as stated by Mr. Davey, work must start now. And this brings me to the policy framework for gas investments in the UK. Sorry, that was the wrong way. Investments in CGTs has been sluggish since 2010, despite projects totaling 12 gigawatt having received the necessary permits and consents to build, and the fact that there is a clear need to replace the aging coal and nuclear fleet. DEC figures show investors to be holding back on investment for some 6 gigawatt of consented capacity. National Grid, however, estimates the held back investment in gas powered generation to be as much as 9 gigawatt. Be it 6 or 9, that's not the point. Even if these were to be built, the UK would be respectively 8 gigawatt or 5 gigawatt short of the government's recently announced ambition. The concern we have is simply that investors are likely to continue to hold back in the presence of, first, clean spark spreads being still negative, with the curve, I must admit, suggesting a possible move into low positive levels when I prepared this speech. And secondly, lack of clarity when it comes to regulatory and policy matters. The EMR, the electricity market reform now in the making, aims to secure affordable and low carbon electricity. However, while we welcome this, it is a very complex piece of legislation, and most players are actually struggling to understand how it will play out in practice. As a gas supplier, therefore, I think it's fair to say that we join the generation plant investors in calling for policy initiatives that would improve the economics of gas plants. Therefore, we follow with great interest the development of the capacity mechanism. Clarity on the capacity mechanism, we think, is needed so that investors can progress necessary gas generation projects or investments in these. An additional initiative that adds uncertainty, at least in our mind, is Ofgem's current significant code review with the proposal of emergency cash-out mechanism. Alongside other suppliers, we are concerned that the proposal of £20 per therm cash-out price could undermine liquidity in the UK market, furthermore impose unreasonable onerous cost on the supplier, and thereby actually fail to deliver additional assurance on long-term supply contracts. The easy way around this is, of course, just to trade it in the spot market and forget about long-term contracts, which you wanted in the first place to make sure that there was security of supply in place. Therefore, for us as a supplier and shipper, it could amount to an unimaginable exposure, and we believe that Ofgem should look into other options of reforming the gas emergency arrangements. In sum, therefore, getting the capacity mechanism, the gas generating strategy, the emergency cash-out mechanism right would be important to set gas investments back on track to contribute to an internationally competitive, low-carbon UK economy. Now, in conclusion, over the long term, I believe that the UK gas market will continue to be very attractive to us as a gas producer. Statoil, we have thrived here in this market for more than 3 decades, adapting to a liberalized, transparent, liquid market. Today we're doing all our European short-term gas trading out of London. We use NBP, Europe's most liquid trading point, to balance and optimize our portfolio. The future, however, is of course built today, and therefore the current designing of policy does matter to us. Statoil welcomes the long-term climate and energy policy, but politicians need to recognize, of course, and I'm sure they do, that the choice of policy does affect our decisions, being made now or in future years. We and the energy industry need a clear policy framework that commits to natural gas being a vital part of the energy mix to 2020 and beyond. This is important for us because Statoil, as an investor in upstream projects and as a gas market, need a long-term view on the energy market to make our investments. Potential UK buyers or project developments is pretty much in the same situation. The UK has historically been a champion of free market. This has attracted business to the UK for centuries, has ensured the UK to having one of the lowest energy bills, certainly in Europe. This, I think, is also what should steer the UK energy and climate change policy going forward, securing the UK remaining an attractive place to the European and global energy business. Thank you for your attention.